Wow, so many buttons. Finally get there. Okay, very good. So now we can get started. So we have, as you would know, we've already done kind of 4 days of this retreat already. And the first part of the retreat was basically about setting out the idea of freedom in the early Buddhist texts. Yeah, what does the Buddha have to say about this? How is this word used? The various kind of contexts, etc., etc. And one of the kind of the interesting things about this word freedom and similar words in the suttas is that it occurs in kind of a variety with a variety of different vocabulary. So there's three kind of core words in the sutras that all mean freedom or liberation or release and similar kind of ideas. And that's a lot. Yeah, three words that focus on the same thing. And these words are, vimutti is one of them. And that is very often said to be the purpose of the entire path. Yeah, you come to the very end of the path, and you act, and they talk about this as my kind of final freedom. This is the unshakable freedom that you reach. In fact, very often the final aim of the path is called vimutti, is called liberation. It's very rarely called the highest happiness or anything like that. That is obviously implied. But vimutti is kind of the standard way that this is described, the ending of the path, the purpose of it. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? That is how it is described. And that shows you how core it is, how critical it is to understanding what this is about. And I think one of the reasons for that is simply because vimutti is something we can all relate to. We understand that to a large degree what freedom actually means is the opposite of imprisonment. But although we sort of understand what it means in a kind of general sense related to our ordinary experiences in life, we also don't really understand what it means because it is profound. What does it mean to be liberated in mind? And sometimes you get a glimpse of these things. Yeah, you practice the Dhamma a little bit. You find that one day your mind is, let's go of something. Yeah, you feel more kind of free than you normally feel. And you get a glimpse of the idea of the real freedom in Buddhism. And you start to understand how profound it is. Yeah, how attractive it is, how profound it is. And how if this is a little bit of freedom and it kind of goes much further, yes, please, I'll have some more of that. Thank you very much. Yeah, because it's just very attractive. It draws you in very powerfully. And so the entire purpose of this path is to achieve this thing that we call freedom. And it goes to a very profound level. And this is one of the things that we will investigate as we do this. And then, of course, we're going to investigate how we get there. So vimutti is one word. Another very important word is the word vimokkha, which is kind of related to that. You see this in many places in the suttas. Another word that I mentioned during the first half of this retreat is nisarana or nisarano. Yeah, this is also means like release or freedom or something similar to that. And all of these words are kind of core words that you find in very core part of the vocabulary of the suttas. And if you look around the monastic world, you see people having names, and they're often called Vimutti is a common name among monastics. Vimokkha is another fairly common name. Nisarana, not so common, but I know at least one Nisarana. I mean, have you been to Melbourne? You've been to Melbourne, I guess you know Ajahn Nisarana. We met him in India as well when we were in India recently, so you would know him. So these are all very beautiful, evocative words. Yeah, they evoke something, evoke a feeling inside of you, an idea of something beautiful and like expansive, and something where you feel your mind is no longer contained and contracted and constrained by the ordinary realities of the ordinary world, but is liberated from all of that, grows large, grows happy, content, achieving a higher kind of happiness. You don't even know exactly what that means. But it sounds good. True? Yeah, if you don't think so, then maybe this is the wrong place for you. I don't know. So this is kind of what the Dhamma is about. Yeah, so it's a very positive thing to it. So now we're going to look more at this path to that freedom. See how we can actually achieve this. And so the first sutta I'm going to have a look at is a standard sutta that I usually look at on most retreats. Now we're going to look at the sutta in full. Usually I just look at extracts, and this is a slightly different version of the sutta. The usual name for this kind of sutta, because it is a standard one that you see in many places, is dependent liberation. That's the kind of the name that I use for this sutta. In other words, liberation depends on other things. Yeah, you get to liberation because you cultivate something else that causes liberation to happen. And then you cultivate something else which causes that cause of liberation to happen. Then you cultivate something else that causes that cause of a cause to liberation to happen. It goes back like that to the very kind of most foundational thing here. And this is, to my mind, one of the very important suttas in the Pali Canon. It is important because you find it in so many different places, variations on a theme. Yeah, it is this idea of dependent liberation is also found in the seven awakening factors. Seven awakening factors, basically the same kind of idea with slightly different components, etc. Found in the Anapanasati Sutta, found in the recollections that we had a look at one of those recollections before. And all of these things are really just the same kind of process that we see in so many different places. And if something is seen in so many different places, in so many important contexts, and you know it is a core teaching of the Buddha. And this is really kind of central to what he was talking about. Especially when you talk about the seven factors of awakening, the Satta Sambojjhanga in Pali, they are part of the 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhammas, the 37 aids to awakening. And in the suttas, the Buddha says that these 37, well, that is what his Dhamma is about. This is his teaching. So again, it shows you how core this is. This ability to kind of pick out the teachings that are really important on the path and not be so concerned about those who are more marginal, those things you encounter maybe once or twice. They are, they cannot be that important if Buddha only taught them once or twice. This is an important distinction to make. This is how you can decide which suttas really matter. Yeah, those that are taught to many different people, slight variations on the theme, many different places. Obviously, they are going to be very important because they are taught everywhere. They are core. Whereas other teachings are kind of given once or twice, and you wonder whether they were ever given at all. Maybe there's a later addition or whatever, but not so the core teachings. Yeah, so Noble Eightfold Path, obviously fundamental, Four Noble Truths, gradual training, and the dependent liberation there. So that is how it all goes. So let's have a look at this. So the name of this sutta is What's the Purpose? Good question. What's the purpose? And there is an alternative version of this sutta called the Chaitana Sutta, the Intention Sutta, or Chaitana Karaniya Sutta, I think it's called, or Chaitana Karaniya Sutta, not to be done by intention, which is basically the same thing from a slightly different perspective. So let's have a look at this sutta. What's the purpose? So I have heard the very first sutta, part 2 of the retreat. Starting on page 50, I think it is. Is that correct? Page 50? Yeah? Okay, page 50. So turn to page 50, and then we'll start there. So have I heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park, or monastery, sorry, which I should read before I say what it means. So in the Pindika's monastery. Then Venerable Ananda went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him. So this is kind of interesting. You have Venerable Ananda asking the Buddha. Why is he asking the Buddha? Doesn't he know the Dhamma already? If Venerable Ananda doesn't know the Dhamma, what chance have we got? Yeah, we are in serious trouble if he doesn't understand it. And There's many reasons why, but someone like Venerable Ananda, sometimes Venerable Sariputta, sometimes all of these great monks and nuns, why they may ask the Buddha. One reason may be that maybe they're not yet fully enlightened. Maybe they want to clarify some point. Or very often what you find also with the senior monastics is that they have discussions with each other, not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of everyone else listening. Yeah? So you can imagine you get Ajahn Shah and Ajahn Brahm having a discussion up here, yeah? And they kind of asking each other questions, and you kind of sitting there listening in. That's kind of a discussion you want to hear, right? When you hear someone very well known having a discussion like that. And recently I had on Ajahn Brahma's 50th anniversary, I kind of interviewed Ajahn Brahma a little bit. That was good fun because I could really kind of probe him. The thing is, I know Ajahn Brahma so well. I'm not really afraid of Ajahn Brahma anymore. You might be afraid of asking Ajahn Brahma questions, but I am not afraid. The only thing I'm afraid of is making too much bad karma for myself. So I kind of be careful what you say. That's the only thing. Yeah. But that's good fun, yeah, because when you know somebody, you're more at ease. It's quite easy. So I feel quite at ease, actually very at ease with Ajahn Brahm. And so it's kind of nice to have those kind of conversations. So this here could be something like that, yeah. Ananda talking to the Buddha and they're kind of having a nice time together, yeah? Chatting about the Dhamma, if you like, yeah. So now we have a chance to listen in, yeah, to these two great people in the Buddhist world. What are they going to say to each other? Yeah, yeah, very, very exciting. Super exciting. Listen. Yeah, now is the opportunity to listen. Open up your mind. Take in the Dhamma as these two great people are talking to each other. Yeah. The Buddha always says this, right? Listen. Apply your mind to understand. Don't just kind of sit there with a kind of semi-dull, yeah, whatever, and see what happens. Please don't take the Dhamma like that. And as you listen to these things, there is so much to be learned. There's kind of it opens up a reality. And even if you have heard this sutta 10 times before, it needs to be reinforced more until you are enlightened. It is never boring until you become enlightened if you have the right attitude, how to think about it. Yeah, that is kind of the issue here. So let's see what they have to say. Sir, what is the purpose, says Venerable Ananda to the Buddha, and benefit of skillful ethics? Why should I be kind? Why should I not kind of do bad things? What is the purpose of that? I mean, surely you will know this many answers to this question already. But of course, when Venerable Ananda asks this, it gains a special kind of significance, yeah, because it's asked by someone who is already close to awakening and who has so many good qualities. So what is really the purpose and benefit of ethics? Yes, you're supposed to keep the 5 precepts because the Buddha said you should do that. Is there more to ethics than keeping the 5 precepts? Now that is a very interesting point. Yeah, because very often in Buddhist circles, people think, yeah, I'm keeping the 5 precepts, I'm kind of doing ethics. But is that really all there's to it? And the answer is no, there's much more to ethics than the 5 precepts, and people often don't quite understand that. But once you kind of get that, then you apply yourself further. Please, at the very minimum, keep the 5 precepts. That's like the minimum requirement. Sometimes people come and say, oh yeah, I can't keep the 5 precepts, yeah, it's too difficult, I have a lover, or is that okay, Venerable, to have a lover? Sometimes these things are necessary. Or, okay, really? Or I drink a little bit. Is it okay to drink occasionally when I kind of hang out with my friends? Or it's so much pressure to drink, yeah, all these kind of things. Or sometimes you have to kill those mosquitoes or cockroaches. We had a discussion about cockroaches here the other day. So hard not to kill the cockroaches. What? Ants, another one. Okay, ants are also not to kill. Okay, yeah. So, but these things are really fundamental and really important. So please take these things incredibly seriously if you want to make progress on the spiritual path. So now let's see what the Buddha replies to this very interesting question. Please don't read too much ahead because that kind of destroys some of the fun. Because I want to have fun with you, right? So I'm going to kind of tease you a little bit and see what happens. And if kind of can't really tease anyone if they know what's going to happen next. So you got it. So let's see what it says. So what is the purpose and benefit of skillful ethics? Ananda, having no regret, is the purpose and benefit of skillful ethics. So you have no regrets. And that's kind of obvious. Yeah, if you really live well, you don't have any regrets. But the idea of having no regrets is a very profound thing. You may think that having no regrets means you think, oh yeah, you don't think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That was, oh no, why did I do that? That was such a bad idea. Why did I get drunk and I do all of those stupid things when I was drunk? That kind of thing. Why did I kind of I was just angry. I shouldn't have been angry at that time, but I couldn't stop myself. And so these things happened. And that's kind of feeling regret. But sometimes you may not even think that. What happens rather sometimes is that you just feel that the mind is not bright, the mind is not clear, the mind doesn't have the power, the energy, and those kind of things. And that is kind of the result of non-regret. You may not think these thoughts because not everyone thinks these thoughts, but just because you don't think those thoughts does not mean it doesn't affect your mind. It still affects your mind regardless whether you want to or not. There will be a kind of regret that is not verbalized, that you may not quite understand yourself. And the way that you know that you have no regrets is that you feel glad. Yeah, you feel glad in general. You feel, yay, I'm living a good life. You are kind to other people. You have a sense, usually, either you have metta or you have karuna, either you have this friendliness and kindness or you have compassion for people. If you have those two things all the time, how can you possibly feel regret? And that is the level of um, ethics that we're talking about here. We're talking about a level where basically either you have compassion or you have friendliness to everyone around you. At the very most, you are neutral. Yeah, are equanimous. Sometimes there's nothing else to do. You have to be equanimous towards people. So that's kind of the level. It's a very, very high level we're talking about. It's very difficult and it takes enormous amount of commitment and perseverance to be able to reach that kind of state level of ethics. That is what we should aim for here. And the surprising thing here is that yes, it takes commitment, yes, it takes perseverance, but it is not difficult. It is not hard. All it takes is a particular way of thinking. And if you don't, I've been talking about this way of thinking ever since I started coming to KL, giving talks. I'm talking about it yesterday, that in the early days I did retreats at Wat Jetawan. Did any of you come to the early retreats at Wat Jetawan? Were you there? Shui, you were there. Linda, you were there. Okay, that's good. This is back in, I don't know, 2014 or even earlier. I can't remember what, maybe it's a long time ago anyway, 10, 12, 15 years ago, whatever. And the same kind of sutras. And it's kind of surprising how long it often takes for the message to sink in. I'm not saying because I'm not blaming you. I'm just thinking of myself. I've been a monk for 30 years. I still need to hear these teachings after 30 years. Yeah, so I feel it's even more difficult for you because you're not monks and nuns. You don't live these things all the time. And so when I know that I'm so slow, I think maybe other people are also a little bit slow. It's not just me, that I'm just incredibly dull compared to everyone. I think we're all a little bit. It takes time, it takes reconditioning, and that's the problem. And so this is the profundity of ethics, that basically you should feel glad about your existence. And for this reason, Ananda says, what is the purpose and benefit of having no regrets? And then, of course, the Buddha says, joy is the purpose and benefit of having no regrets. When you have no regrets, there will be that sense of gladness and joy in you. Yeah, and if it isn't, it's because your ethics are not profound enough yet. You can take this one step further. So this is very demanding. Takes commitment and perseverance, but it's not difficult. It can be done. It's a matter of guiding your mind, thinking in a new way, applying right view, understanding what human beings really are. And when you understand the nature of human beings, how can you get angry with them? It doesn't make any sense anymore. It becomes completely ridiculous. It's like getting angry with a robot. Can you really get angry with a robot? Bad robot, and you give the robot a kick. Have you got? We had a robot they took me to a very nice restaurant yesterday for lunch. And that was very, very nice to go there. And they had this robot roaming around, yeah, in the aisles, kind of serving. I don't know what it was doing. It didn't look like it was doing very much, but anyway, it looked kind of fancy running around in the restaurants. And human beings, we are a bit like those robots. How can you get angry with that poor robot? It doesn't know what it's doing. It's running on a program. Are you going to shout to the robot? Stop, robot! Shut up, robot! Go away, robot! What are you going to do? This kind of little thing moving about. And this is so. This is kind of. I'm talking about this more later on. This is such an important idea. Understanding what human beings are. This arises out of the right view. This arises out of the insight into the Buddha, into the nature of human beings, the non-self nature. From that comes this understanding of how we should think about human beings that allows us to have metta and compassion. It's very interesting because we think that compassion is just something that you have to train, something that you have to kind of reflect on again and again. But actually, and this is kind of the important point, is that it arises out of right view. Right view is the foundation for everything. If you want to be able to be really compassionate, you have to have right view, first of all, to some degree. I talked about that during the talk here on Tuesday night, because it was about mindfulness is not enough. And it was really about how to bring ethics and right view into the idea of mindfulness to make it stronger. And the same thing is true for virtue and kindness. Right view is what enables virtue and kindness of any kind, and especially to the higher levels. So is that just me saying that? Or did the Buddha say that? The Buddha said that, yeah. Noble Eightfold Path, number one, right view. From right view comes right intention. From right intention comes all the ethics, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Everything founded on right view. Straight from the most fundamental of all the Buddha's teachings, Noble Eightfold Path, Arya Atangika Magga. So, joy is the purpose and benefit of having no regrets. Yeah, this is what the Buddha promises. Now you start to see why ethics, morality, kindness, compassion, all of this, why it is so powerful. So, then what? But what is the purpose and benefit of joy? You might think, why even ask that question? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of course, everyone wants to be joyful. Isn't that reason enough in its own right? And in a sense, it is. It is, in a sense, reason enough. Yeah, if you feel joyful and happy, that's very useful. But after a while, you realize that that joy is kind of unstable and unreliable and uncertain. Yeah, we don't know how the future is going to go. And so we want to take this further to see how far we can take things, to maybe gain something that is more permanent, more powerful, where we can gain some real understanding. Maybe we can achieve the meaning of life. Maybe we can achieve a higher kind of liberation, that whereby these things are no longer unstable or uncertain or reliant on certain conditions to be kept alive. That's kind of what we want to do. So, what indeed is the purpose and benefit of the joy? Where can this take us? Before we answer that, let's have a 5-minute break. For those of you who were not here during the first half, the idea is that every half an hour we have a 5-minute break. Then you can either sit and do some meditation practice, or you can stretch your legs, or toilets over here, or whatever you need to do in those 5 minutes. And then we have Q&A afterwards. So we are going to carry on like this with plenty of breaks. And as always, it's nice to just allow everyone to ask questions and make comments as we go along. So we kind of, have a conversation going in a sense. A bit of interaction, I think, is always good to be able to understand things properly. So would anyone have anything they would like to say? So we have Wei Chuang, so you can start things off.
Morning, Ajahn. So I wonder why, in the graduate training, the generosity and virtue is there in the beginning, but then in the formulation of Noble Eightfold Path, you start off with right view, then
Yeah.
only then the sila part comes afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why is that?
Okay.
One
Why is
starts.
it a
Yeah.
difference? How come right view is not mentioned here? I think here, here I think the right view is kind of implied. It's kind of underlying the whole thing that there is a right view already, because in a sense there isn't really any full development of ethics without right view. It takes that right view to be able to do that. And so I would say, because the Buddha presents things in different ways, he doesn't always present everything together, because every situation gives slightly different angles on things. Now, this here really is a presentation of meditation, yeah, because all of these things are things that happen during meditation practice. And so here it says that the meditation depends on ethics. And I think ethics is the most important one. If you are able to be ethical, then the meditation will happen. Yeah, so right view is not kind of as immediately obvious. So in general, in the suttas, ethics is kind of has a centerpiece throughout the suttas, because that is what directly feeds into the meditation. Whereas right view is a bit more distant, and that's why maybe why it is not here in this particular context. But you do find it in the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view is first. You do find it also in the gradual training, because in the gradual training, in terms, in the way it is explained in Majjhima Nikaya 27, the shorter simile of the elephant's footprint, it starts off with the arising of the Buddha in the world. Then you hear the Dhamma, then you go forth, then the path happens, right? So that's also right view. It's actually there in that gradual training as well. So, yeah.
Ajahn, good morning.
Good morning.
So just now I was actually wanting to ask about joy arise from ethics and no regrets.
Yeah.
So I was wondering to compare with the joy from meditation. Is it the same? But just now you already mentioned this is in context of meditation.
Yeah. I mean, it's not always. It can happen outside of meditation as well. Yeah, you just kind of go through the day, you live well, and you feel good about yourself. You can feel joy. It can happen. But here, if you look at the rest of the sequence, then it becomes obvious that it is about meditation, because it goes to samadhi, all of these kind of things. So, but it can absolutely happen outside of meditation as well. It's just a natural consequence of these things. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Very good.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning. Yeah.
I'd like to ask about right view.
Yeah.
So right view is the first thing, right? How do we arrive at right view? Because there's like different angles of looking at things. So some people will look at Buddhism and say like it's like falling into nihilism, anti-life, and things like that. So it's the first thing and it's the most important thing, but how do we arrive at it and have enough confidence?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, right view is basically just listening to the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha is the one who discovers right view. He discovers the reality of the world, what the world actually is like. And so by listening to the word of the Buddha, it's right view. I mean, this sutta here is also an aspect of right view. Understanding the sequence is a kind of right view. So everything in the sutras is really about seeing the world in the right way, as it actually is. But then there are certain aspects of right view that are more important than others. And certain aspects of right view will feed into ethics. Yeah. So what will feed into ethics? And well, one of them is a sense of, one of the important ones, the sense of urgency, that it matters now, because then you will be ethical now. You won't put it off till tomorrow, or okay, now I have to do something naughty, but tomorrow I will be nice, or whatever. Yeah. So a sense of urgency is one of them. And the sense of urgency can be developed by contemplating death, for example. Death contemplation, that you don't know when things are going to come to an end. You don't know whether the Dhamma will be around in your next life. You don't know what's going to happen around the corner. Everything is so incredibly uncertain. General contemplation of impermanence is very, very powerful, because impermanence just means actually don't know what's going to happen next. And then all of this kind of makes you feeling, okay, I got to do it now. Another kind of aspect of right view is just what I was talking about before, is the idea that you know what people are at the end of the day, and that people are, they are, first of all, they are suffering. Yeah, everyone is suffering, and that kind of helps us to have compassion for them. If someone does something bad and stupid, usually people do stupid things because they are suffering. Yeah, they have something inside of them, they're feeling some kind of frustration or whatever it might be, and then it comes out in bad conduct. And so the fact that people have occasionally bad conduct comes often from that suffering. It is also more profoundly, and this is kind of the idea of right view of non-self. And this is kind of the main aspect of the Buddha's insight into reality, is the idea of non-self. This is kind of the critical thing that makes Buddhism different from any other kind of spiritual teaching, is the idea of non-self. But the idea of non-self, it may seem very kind of theoretical. How do we apply this in our daily life? How do we deal with this? What difference does it really make for us? And the answer is, when it comes to compassion and metta, it makes an enormous difference. Because non-self means that instead of you deciding, I'm going to do this bad action, if someone decides they're going to do bad action towards you, I'm going to, because I want to be bad, so I'm going to be bad, then it kind of makes sense to maybe get upset with it, right? Because they are doing bad against me, they shouldn't do that. But if there is no self, and the reason why they do what they're doing is because of cause and conditions, they are forced, like this robot going through the restaurant didn't have any choice. It had to walk back and forth, even though it didn't seem to have any purpose. I don't know what it was doing. It was kind of walking like, well, it had no choice in the matter. So how can you get upset with that robot? In the same way, people don't really have any choice. They are compelled by circumstances, by condition, to do what they are doing. And so sometimes bad things come out of their mouth, not because they want to say bad things, but because they have no choice in the matter. If they really had a choice, they would always be kind, wouldn't they? If you had a choice, wouldn't you always be kind? Is there anyone here who really would want to do bad things if you could choose not to? But sometimes we can't help ourselves. It just comes out. If I tell you, don't say anything, don't have a single bad thought for the rest of the day today, are you going to be able to do that? Well, if you are, congratulations. But most of you are not going to be able to do that, right? Because it's very, very hard, at least to get a little bit irritated by someone who does an irritating thing. This is just the way it is. And so we are programmed. Everyone is programmed. And when you understand that, you have compassion for them because they do bad things, even though they want to do good things. They are compelled to do those bad things. How then can you not have compassion for them when they are acting against their own best interest? They're acting for their own suffering. And then they don't understand and they can't change their habits and all of these kind of things. Then you have to have compassion. Then you also have compassion for yourself. You start thinking that you are in control of your life because you're not. And then you start, whenever something ugly comes out of your mouth, instead of being angry with yourself, you have compassion for yourself. And that ability to have compassion for yourself when something dodgy comes out of your mouth, that helps you to change in the future, because then you can be cool about it. You can ask for cause and conditions, and then you can change your attitude, etc. Anyway, so this is kind of how right view works, right? In many little ways like this, it kind of comes in, and it is rooted in two things: non-self and impermanence and rebirth. Rebirth, non-self, impermanence is a kind of some of the three kind of main aspects there. Yeah, there are many other aspects of right view as well, which are really important, but that's probably enough for now. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, over here. Yeah, please.
Good morning, Ajahn. Thank you. You, how am I going to phrase this? You mentioned, I'm trying to get a bit more clarity around what you say about non-self.
Okay.
Okay. How would you understand non-self would be the projection that you place on what you think who you are. So therefore, the non-self, does that mean in your mind, or at least I'm trying to understand this, is sort of like the philosophy around emptiness.
Yeah.
Right? Okay,
Yeah.
then I get it.
Yeah, emptiness, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, emptiness. So, yeah.
Then if that's the case, then how does karma play a role in that? So let's say that, if you have someone
Yeah.
and you're born with born again, and some people are born a bit more compassionate and a bit more kinder than the other, then does that mean you could lose that along the way, and therefore you got to keep reinforcing it?
Yes.
And that's where the emptiness and the non-self comes in, so that you can understand why you're doing certain things and analyze it deeper and deeper.
Yeah, so
Okay,
it
thank
means
you.
precisely that you can lose things again. This is kind of the scary thing. Yeah, sometimes it feels, oh, I'm a good person. I'm always going to be good. Actually, maybe not always going to be good. You get under the wrong influence, and you start to become a bad person. Why? Because no self. There's nothing to hold this together. It's just cause and conditions. There's no pillar. There's no strength within that always stands there and goes in the right way. And so, yes, it means that. It also means that you can start to understand yourself through cause and conditions. And then you can change the cause and conditions, and you will change. That's the positive outlook. If there is a self, and that self is bad, that's it. Tough luck. Yeah, you're always going to be bad because the self is bad. Yeah, so you're kind of stuck with that one. But if there isn't anything fundamentally solid inside of you, it means that we are very flexible as well. We can change our outlook. We can do things in new ways. We just have to deal with our habits. That's difficult enough, yeah, because they are very stuck very often. But at least we know they can be changed. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We're getting into the kind of deep things. Sorry,
One more.
Venerable, I didn't even see you over there. Okay.
Well,
I
it's the
cannot say
same
no.
topic,
Yeah.
about right view.
Yes.
I don't remember where I read from. Not sure it's the Tipitaka Thai translation or some other text. It said the right view is based on the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah. That is one right view. One way it is defined as the knowing the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, dukkha jnana. Yeah, the dukkha jnana, dukkha samudaya jnana. That's kind of thing. Yeah, understanding the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that should be the most important one. That's why,
Yeah.
if the purpose is to be free from the dukkha,
Yeah.
so the right view should be based on the Four Noble Truths.
Sure, I absolutely agree. That's true. But the thing is that right view has many different aspects to it.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
then you
thought.
have to,
This
yeah,
aspect should be the most important.
then you need to apply those different aspects at the right time. Yeah, so you need in different situations, different aspects apply here. And so when we're talking about the idea of how to have compassion for people, then the idea of non-self is a very, very useful one. Look, suffering is also very useful because if you know that people are suffering, then of course compassion tends to arise as well. So
No.
it's all about the situation.
Yeah, but the right view is most important for oneself, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So if you have the right
Yeah.
view, then everything will go along well.
Yes, but it's knowing how to apply that right view.
Yeah.
You have to know how to apply it, and the Four Noble Truths is also very profound, and very often the full knowledge of the Four Noble Truths only happens when you become an Arya. So for most ordinary people, it is not so easy. That's why the Buddha has another way of talking about right view, and that is kind of the ordinary right view. And that ordinary right view you also found many places in the sutras. It is the right view that there is what is given, there is fruit and results of actions, there is rebirth, and this kind of thing. Yeah.
But I think the most important one should be the Four Noble Truths.
In the end, it is the most important one, because in the end, that is what you discover. But on the way, you have to use various tools to kind of make you move forward on the path. So context is also very important. Yeah. Okay.